So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wish Alliance Cosmic Conversations. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, and tonight I am very pleased to have Marina Seren as our special guest. But before we start, I do want to give you a really quick reminder. If you are not a member of our Wish Alliance Facebook page, please go on and ask to join. We keep all kinds of updated information. There's wonderful posts that people are always putting on there. And so if you can, if you want to go ahead, I'll make sure to keep checking that on a regular basis so that you can join the Facebook page. It's listed as Wish Alliance, WISHALLIANCE, or you can type in walk-ins, indigos, starseeds, and hybrids. Now, tonight, I'm not going to do a big introduction of Marina because part of the introduction is the story of her life, which I really want her to share with us in her own words. So, Marina, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to you, and I can't wait to hear your story.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I'm so glad you invited me, and I'm so excited to share my experiences with you all and my story. I have really much things to share, and I'm glad I'm here again, so thank you. I actually wanted to start with how actually this started for me, because how my awakening developed is actually a perfect sample of how the information is coming right now to the planet in these times of transformation. So when I was about 50 years old, I was suddenly really interested in science, and I became really interested in occult sciences or metaphysics, because I really understood that there was something more to reality as we've been taught to in school. And actually, I always have the intense desire to understand how the universe works and why we exist. That's the big question, right? Why do we exist? So it was pretty magical to me, because it all started as a question, and it ended up putting me in such a mission, such a position of getting all these downloads about what's really going on. And it was so fast that it's really fascinating. It's really amusing to be here on Earth, even if it's tough and if it's hard. It's really incredible times. It's amazing. And I think we are privileged souls to be in the front line, because there are many good things coming forward. So yeah, I started being interested about science, being interested about human evolution. And I asked things like, how does the universe works? Why do we exist? What is the course of human evolution? And why humans were the ones who really evolved further beyond what we've seen on other species, like on Earth. And so suddenly I started to get questions. And what I came to understand is that often when you get a question, that's a download coming. Because when you have a question, you also have the answer coming forward. You're actually pulling that energy to you, like you're pulling the energy forward and back. So it's kind of like you're channeling the information. So I was starting to ask myself these big questions, and I will go, do my little research in YouTube, on pages and web pages, on blogs of people talking about extraterrestrial contact and the theory that we were created by the Anunnaki. And suddenly all those things started clicking on me and to activate something, because when I will read those articles, I will understand that that was my home, that was my home state of being, like my nature, understanding all these things. So I started to get that everything was a simulation, that the universe is not a physical objective, structure, but rather a projection of consciousness. Because quantum physics, that is a really interesting science that I've always been into since I was little, tell us that there is no crystallized, there's no solid matter, everything, it's like a wave of quantum probability. And actually, we, with our consciousness, we manifest that which we're tuning into vibrationally. So it's all like a manifestation of consciousness, you know. So I was starting to get all these things and actually wonder why humans evolved into what we are today. Because for some reason, like the evolution that I have been taught to, and we have been all taught to in school, didn't make sense to me. Because sincerely, like we as hominids, we were actually adapted to the environment that we were existing in. We were actually used to it, and our projection forward, our evolution was projecting in a way, in a directionality that wasn't kind of like provoking all these genetic mutations that will put us in a state of being collectively, of desiring to or knowing how to manipulate nature. We were actually surviving and projecting forward in our evolution to adapt ourselves to our environment, you know, in different ways, you know, like expressing more of like the development of natural like attributes of like the animals, like, you know, like nails, like longer nails, and like bare teeth, just like other animals. So that should have like jump that we made in terms of evolution, like mental, emotional, physical, physiological, was just no way that it was provoked by an environmental event. Because for such a big response, such a big jump, such a big, totally different trajectory and projection forward, there must have been a really big life-changing environmental event that will also affect other species to actually evolve the same way. But why humans highlight themselves as the only species who will make that change within their evolutionary course? So that was the question that actually made me channel the information behind it and put myself forward to investigate more about it. And so I actually get to the point of understanding how we were a hybridized species. We were not hominids that evolved from the apes, such as we have been taught in school. And so I started to resonate with all these articles that I have been reading and all these videos about the Anunnaki, you know. It didn't feel like alien to me. It didn't feel like different or like crazy. There was some sort of strong familiarity around it that I felt like, boom, you know, that's it. We were just remembering. I'm remembering, like, this is not something that it's new to me, really. It's something that we as a species already knew and already knew back in the past. So, you know, with this information that I was coming forward with, you know, coming to understand more, I actually activated my Kundalini and initiated that process of Starseed Awakening. And well, at the beginning, of course, it was a really crazy path, because, of course, even though the information seems really natural to all of us when we get to it and we feel like we're getting home with it, we're finally remembering that which we forgot, there is challenges, because those challenges are part of the process of awakening. And we know this because to bring back consciousness, we first need to get in touch with unconsciousness. That's how the mechanics of nature, of universe works, of consciousness. So it was a really traveling process, because when you awake your Kundalini energy, what's happening, it's that as if a sense around all of your chakras, around your spine, you start to kind of like project negative belief systems or negative vibrational frequencies that you're holding on to, that you're resisting in each chakra, that it's going to express as a narrative, as a challenge in your life. And it is really powerful because it is meant to bring you really powerful energies, really powerful awareness, really powerful consciousness. So, that's why many of us have had really traumatic experiences when we were awakening, when we were being activated, because it's part of it. And what I found out is that the feminine energy and the masculine energy, if we observe the Kundalini symbol, the symbol of the Kundalini awakening, we see the two snakes, like intertwining around a straight line. And we see the two wings, and we see a little ball in between. Well, actually, the two snakes are representing the feminine and the masculine energies, because consciousness it's dual, it's a trinity, because there is balance in between the dual energies of masculine and feminine. But the awakening, it's a play of duality. So to get to that balance point, that state of neutrality, of integration, the two energies, the two dual energies of masculine and feminine, like dark, etc., they have to play in a sort of dynamic of oscillation. That's why we have states of happiness, then states of depression, then states of joy, then states of, again, repression. We oscillate like that. And that's actually the rhythm, the dynamics that we go forward with the process of awakening and the activation of our Kundalini. So the vertical line represents how the chakras are aligned around the spine, because that's the physical expression, that's the physical geometrical expression of how many different keys, many different truths, many different ideas of our consciousness are projecting in a way that we can experience the idea of alignment, but in a physical two-dimensional structure. So actually, we are powerful. For example, the chakras always tell us these different ideas that we have. We have the I am power, I am ground, which is the root chakra. We have the I am sexual, the I am creative, which is the sacral. We have the I am will, I am projection, which is the solar plexus. We have the I am love, the I am connection, feelings, which is the heart chakra. And we have the communication, the I am expression, which is the throat. We have the I am sight, I am psychic, I see, which is the third eye. And we have the I am universal consciousness, which is the crown chakra. So all of those ideas are expressed in a vertical physical expression, so that we can experience the idea, the abstract concept of alignment. And they are projected in a way that it has an below and an above, because those different other abstract ideas of above and below also has to express itself in a way that it makes sense in space and time. So when the Kundalini energy is awakening, the masculine and the feminine energies are intertwining around this spine projection of different ideas of our consciousness. As it ascends above, it starts to project and kind of like unlock different blockages, energetical frequency blockages that we have of ourselves, that we have been holding on, even karmic, or even if it's our own karma or the lineage or our own genetic ancestry. It's a combination of many things, because we're far much more than our own vessels, our own genetic lineages on a physical perspective. So we will always have a lot to deal with, especially in the lower chakras. So as it ascends above, then we have the two wings, which represents those same dual energies, the masculine and the feminine, because they are mimicking, they're reflecting They are made in the image of the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain, which is the creative part, the feminine, you know, the extra, the meaningful, and we have then the logical, the objective, the mathematical, the masculine. So that wings, those wings represent that kind of like integrated consciousness in terms of duality, in terms of masculine and feminine. And the small ball in between those it's the pineal gland, which is, you know, it's the eye that sees all. It's the eye of Horus, as we know, the one who holds the knowledge, the ancient wisdoms. And these dual spiral energies are expressed with the symbol of the snake, because in ancient times, the snake represented ancient wisdom, knowledge. So that's basically what I was experiencing, when we wake up, and what I was personally experiencing when my Kundalini was activated. And is that I had a lot of negative belief systems, negative blockages that I was holding on to in my lower chakras. So that I will get all of these negative attacks by different energies, like entities, like service to others, as we call it. I mean, service to self people, and service kind of like to others will also be helping me. But I was actually, when this happens, we're actually just expressing only our energy. We're not just, it's not like we're the victims of these people. It's not that we are in a narrative in which there is a separation between the outside and the inside, but actually there is also like a part that we need to understand, and it's like responsibility, you know. And when I actually was going through these processes, of course, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of victimization, and it is part of the process in a sense, because the third dimension is what is taught, is what is teaching us that we are victims in a sense. But it's part of the process to experience victimacy, because if we don't do it, we never get to strengthen ourselves, we never get to empower ourselves. So we need to understand that it is okay to feel that we're victims of something, to feel that we are disempowered, to feel that somebody is attacking us, that this is something that it's wrong, that it is not our fault and everything. But there must be a time, there is a time in our awakening in which we understand, as we comprehend the structure of the Kundalini, we understand that these energies are not separated beings. They're not separated from us in the sense of energy. They are the projection of our consciousness. It's just that there is a play of duality, of victim abuser, when we are in third dimension in polarity consciousness, because that's part of it, as I explained. But once we empower ourselves, once we strengthen our spirit and our DNA, we start to remember the awareness that it is our own energy. And that's when we finally get to the point of ascending, making our first step in fourth dimension, fourth density consciousness, because we understand how everything, it's really our own energy and our own belief systems projected in the outside, in a narrative or in a story or whatever, in the shape of whatever. But it's meant to be played with characters, with scenarios, with backgrounds, so that we get the symbols, we get the ideas, we get the reflection of what it is that we're holding on to, what is that we need to integrate to put that in consciousness. What are the lies that we are believing that is not true about ourselves? So what we need to do, it's exactly just be natural, and then understand how we are projecting only our own energy. So, those are things that, comes with the Kundalini. Like first, it's the third dimensional, experience of polarity, of victim abuser, of we're disempowered, we are victims, we're like in a situation of trauma, in a situation of disempowerment. But once we start trusting in our heart space, when we start strengthening our DNA and understanding that it is us and only us, and that we are source energy, and that we hold this infinite potential, and that there is a structure as to how this is presented to us that we can understand, and once we understand, we have the power back to us. When we have built this vibrational base, when we are ready to deal with anything, we're ready to see the structure of things and take responsibility for all these things and say, no, this is my energy, which doesn't mean that it is who I am, because that's the most important part of awakening of the Kundalini, to understand that, just because something, it's our energy, does not mean that it is who we are. That's the most powerful aspect of our awakening.
Hey, sweetie.
That we are not the lies that we experience, and everything that is fear, everything that it is negative energy, everything that is experienced as a challenge, as a blockage, it's not who we truly are. It's a lie. So that's the part of integration. And with that part of integration starts to get assembled and embraced in the individual, it's when we as a species collectively will start getting what we call the third strand of the Kundalini awakening. And that third strand, that third spark, intertwining energy of the two snakes intertwining, representing the masculine and the feminine, it represents that we have transcended polarity, and that we are now playing with different dynamics, which are four-dimensional for density, and that the third dimensional consciousness has been put back to balance. So we will no longer be third-dimensional beings, but rather four-dimensional beings. And that's what the awakening and the transcendence to 4D will be about. This process of integration, of attaining the third strand of this Kundalini energy of integration, So that's why we have been hearing a lot. We have been really receiving a lot of misinformation about going to 5D and all these sort of like new age terms, which is okay, because they're also part of like our own process of learning this discernment, as spiritual beings. But that is actually a concept that it's been really misleading, because we're actually not going physically to the 5D. The 5D is a place in which our higher self resides. It's a place of total integration and total merging with our own higher self, higher mind and spirit, with source energy. There's no polarity energies, but there's also no time and space in the way that we experience here, or even for density. There's no linearity, everything is here and now. And there's really no like physicality in the sense of material, crystallized, biological vessels. That is only for beings who have transcended all of the challenges to be explored in the 4 density. But that's actually not our next step. We're going to 5D, but not in the sense of physicality, but rather in the sense of state of being. And that's a misconception. It's not a physical 5 dimension, it's a spiritual 5 dimension. It's a place within our soul. It's a place within our consciousness. It's a vibration that we will emanate, that we will be oscillating at, not something like a physical actual place, because that's the actual dimension that we go and transcend when we leave our physical bodies. And we as a species haven't yet mastered even the 4 density. So that's one of the misconceptions about, evolution, consciousness, and, the transcendence to the new earth. But it is just a small comment going back to my story. So yeah, this is what I was going through. My Kundalini awakening, and I had many of these dark negative beings. They were attacking me, and back in the day, of course, I felt, well, these beings want to destroy me, they want to kill me, they don't want me here. There's a whole drama, like a whole battle in between, you know, light versus dark, like teams, you know, like the lead, the cabal versus the good beings versus the good extraterrestrial people. And so at the beginning, of course, it was really dramatic, it was really terrible, because I had no clue what was going on, and I will get abducted, and I had no idea what was the hybrid program was about. So I will get really scared. So many times I will receive beings in my room who actually wanted to get me out of my body. And at that time, I thought, whoa, I've read so much negative things about archons and about, you know, service to self beings, that I'm sure that these beings want something negative for me. But so when I was having that experience, something really magical happened. And it's that when I asked telepathically this being, what's that you are? What is that you want? What's your true nature? Are you light? Suddenly I was immersed in all this immense amount of love. And it's one of the most extraordinary light feelings, emotions that I ever felt in my life, in my heart chakra, because it was just not normal. It was not a normal experience. It was not average feeling, you know, it was not like something mundane. It was extraordinary and totally paranormal experience. And I understood that it was indeed a cosmic guide, or, you know, ET, you know, counterpart, or angelic being, or even star family welcoming me to this trip of awakening, and, you know, kind of like informing my heart that I was loved and there was nothing wrong, there was nothing to fear or to be afraid of. So at that moment, I felt in peace. I felt like with much more strength to go forward in my heart. So I will eventually start to accept more of these experiences, because in a sense, even though there was some resistance from my part, I understood that there was something kind of like positive behind it, like there was a mission to make, you know. So we started to see a lot of UFOs in my house. I mean, I remember that it wasn't just me, because I could just say that they were my own, you know, projections, that maybe it was just only visible to me. But actually, no, actually I had friends and family who will also see them in the sky. And it was a really crazy experience, because I will always talk about this with my friends, with my family, and they wouldn't believe me. But when they will go to the terrace, I will see the UFOs, and they were with me, and I had witness with me that it was really happening. It was really like something that was going on, that I wasn't just making up or hallucinating or something. So we were all really puzzled about who they were and what it was about. And I knew that some of them were not positive individuals. There were also negative ones, you know. So that's when I actually started to realize that there was like an entity, like a group of individuals that didn't wanted me to activate and initiate this process, and were trying to put some more resistance to it. And I will actually start getting negative abductions, encounters of a negative kind with beings of a low vibration, and I will have, you know, dreams with military personnel. And that's when I started to think, well, maybe there's some military aspect to it, to this too, you know, not just the extraterrestrial, you know, phenomenon, but also like the military phenomenon, which is when I later realized that it was the secret space program. So all of those things started happening at the same time, more or less in 2015 to 2016 for me. And so I was just really, really kind of like holding. I had all of these little pieces, but I just needed to put them together slowly, tiny, bit by bit, because I didn't have much information about things that were going on. But every time that I will have a question, I will know that there was a lot download behind it. Because again, that's how we actually get downloads, by having strong questions. So I started questioning myself, what are these experiences with the grace about? Why am I being abducted by the grace? Why I have negative encounters with military people? So when I will ask this question, I will synchronistically attract in my experience events that will actually reveal the answer to me. So for example, by synchronicity, I will see the word hybrid everywhere. And I will ask myself, well, what it means hybrid? Does it mean that I'm a hybrid? Does this mean that, I don't know, that I'm in contact with some sort of hybrids? And so by the time I had a friend who was a channeler, and he will channel feeling beings and reptilians too, and I eventually get the chance to ask them. So when I ask them about why I will see the word hybrid everywhere, they will tell me that actually it was true that I have a hybrid component, that my genetics were altered or mutated. And at the same time, that the synchronicity was telling me that I was part of the hybrid programs. And that's when I will start getting, about around 2017, more of the information about the hybrid programs that I was being part of. And so, yeah, those are the times in which I will start getting the most amount of downloads and the most amount of experiences and encounters with extraterrestrials. It was really revealing, because I always knew that I have a genetic connection to the grace. And actually, when I was a 14-year-old person, I always thought that I looked like a little bit like them. So I actually understood that the beings who altered me genetically was the grace, because the hybridization agenda is just not to create hybrids, but we also receive genetic information, because those people are assisting us as we are assisting them. Because when this agenda is just not like giving, and it's not just about helping an entire group of people, of beings, to their own challenges, it's also helping us. That's when I started to understand that the hybrid agenda was not something about service to self, but also service to us humans, because we were projecting ourselves forward in a direction, in a timeline that was getting us to their own path, the path that they explore in their own evolution, which was the energies, the cycle of energies, and the evolutionary cycles of energy of the Anunnaki, the karmic cycles of exploring the ideals of tyranny, disconnection from nature, disconnection from the emotions, disconnection to their body, and disconnection eventually to their true selves as humans, because they are humans. So that's when they repeated the steps of the Anunnaki, and they decided that it was no good for them, that they needed to get back to their human nature. But the only way for them to do it was to go back in time and find viable DNA, which was us. And not only was viable DNA, but it was compatible DNA, because we have genetic attributes that were projecting it themselves to this similar path, of exploration of consciousness, of destruction. So it was just not viable DNA, it was also compatible. And it was also an opportunity of not just them getting assistance, but us getting assisted, so that we will not go down that path. Because if we as a species agree to collaborate and co-create and be part of this program, of this agenda of hybridization, of actually helping a version of us to not commit that mistake again, to make a course correction, or clearing that sort of a negative path of exploration, and change the direction totally for a new, better one, a totally different and better, and a high vibrational one. we're actually doing the same for us, because what we put out is what we get back. And when we help them, in a sense, they help us too. It's a co-creation. So that's when I understood that the way that I was hybridized was just not a coincidence, or it was not just for any other hidden agenda. It was something regarding the evolution of mankind, and it was part of a co-creation of a positive timeline for humanity, an upgraded timeline in which we will not repeat the same steps of the Anunnaki that we were actually starting to commit again. So that was developing itself from one side, and that's when I actually experienced my first sexual encounter with what is my counterpart, my Pleiadian counterpart, which is called Michael. And the way that I realized that it was who it was and what he wanted, what it was the experience about, was with another friend of mine back in the day that was actually experiencing something really similar, you know. So the way that we will meet is actually through that same friend that we have in common, because I will express with these beings about my sexual encounters, and I will often ask, well, are these experiences something related to the hybrid programs, you know? And so she messaged me privately, and she was a psychic intuitive artist, and she was also experiencing this thing, like this kind of sexual encounters with beautiful, you know, entities and extraterrestrials. And so she just came to me and said, hey, this is what's happening to you. I feel that you have a counterpart that is assisting you in your Kundalini awakening, and that is also helping you, assisting you in the hybridization programs. So at that moment, I will make a change. I will make a change of art, you know, like a trade work with her. I will make a portrait of her counterpart, and she will make one of me, as she was a channeler. And she actually get to depict this being, who was the being that I described. It was a Pleiadian counterpart. His call is Mako, and actually, it was really emotional to me, because when I will see the portrait, I will be like, whoa, this is so freaking familiar, you know, like I know this person. I feel I have known him in person before, which I eventually later understood that, yes, that I've seen him when I was much younger in the ships, because we were I was abducted, and many of us were abducted by these positive hybrid agendas, ships like biospheres, you know, in which we eventually meet our counterparts and many of the beings who are assisting in our genetics, like the Mantis and everything. So that's why it felt really familiar, because we have not only we have seen each other on the biosphere already, but actually also, like, we have experienced many years, many eons of time together in different shapes, in different personas, maybe, but we're the same kind of like, we're like twin flames in a sense. So at that moment, I started to get more, feeling more connected to him. I'm feeling less scared of the idea of encountering him in an experience of, you know, sexual encounters, or you know, abduction, like astral abduction, out of body experience. And that's when, in the village, when I was one night, I was going to fall asleep, I remember that I was becoming paralyzed, and suddenly I felt that I might be attacked. I mean, I might get an attack, because I was again really resisting of all these encounters. I was just discerning, because I also have the negative part of this awakening process, which is the military beings. So I actually released all negative feelings or judgments about the experience, and I was actually experienced a surge of sexual energy, and at the same time I will experience an awakening of my heart chakra. And that's the moment that I felt like that I knew that it was him, because it was like so intense, like the knowing that it is, that his energy was present, that it was not a threat, that it was like a co-creative experience, you know, like a positive encounter. It was so certain, it was so familiar, the frequency, that there was just no doubt, that I didn't have no need to see him physically to know that it was him. And that's actually how I realized that these beings indeed do not need names. Many times, many civilizations don't use names. At that moment I understood why. Because when you connect to somebody in such a way, an extraterrestrial being who is really integrated into their, you know, their self, it's so high vibrational, and they're so integrated, they're so much of themselves, so expressing much more of their energy, of their true energy, that they actually, there's no doubt of who they are. They actually, you can know others' energy just by their presence. So when I was starting to experience this, I fell asleep eventually, but that was because I was feeling a little bit of resistance in my body, and I actually preferred to meet him in the astral. And when I went out of my body, I saw him, and I, you know, I kind of like make myself more sure that it was him, and that we were having like a counterpart connection, like a communion together, and that it was, you know, for not just for connection, but for hybrid agenda purposes. And so we merged our souls, and after that event I started to remember more of my participation in the hybrid programs, and I will see him in the ships, and I eventually will have high representations of children. I will see, for example, one day I will be on the ship and I will be presented a green skin baby with really big eyes. And what I came to understood is that it has Mantis DNA. That's why it has a green skin. Other time I was presented a Sakani baby, which was part of the Sasani civilization, because that's just another name to call it. And it was hybrid, it was a hybrid between gray and human DNA. So it had like gray skin and pale eyes, and it didn't have hair at the moment. Probably won't have her in the future neither. I'm not sure, because some of them have her, some not. And I actually also got presented two other more children, like hybrid gray children, by another counterpart, which is another part of my children, which is a great being. And the way that it was on the astral. This was in 2020 or 20 of this year, I'm not sure. But I actually was pulled out of my body, and I met him in the astral, and we were in my room, we were on my terrace, and I saw this great being holding a small baby, like hybrid baby, in his arms. And I remember that he even let me touch it, and his skin was so soft that I was so it was really, really emotional. It was so beautiful, baby. And it was such a cute, child, that I was really excited. So, another really interesting aspect to that experience is that the gray was not like the grays that many of us came in contact with in the past. When if we think about the negative gray encounters, in which there is fear, there is a little bit of trauma in the action process, there's a little bit of disconnection from the emotional part. This gray being actually had a lot of human energy. He looked completely gray, but he had a really immense heart chakra, because when the greats started their hybridization program, they also started started to get like infusions of human DNA to make themselves in a soul level more compatible with the hybrid vessels that they were creating. They needed to make kind of like a link between their very own species as grays and the actual hybrids, because when a soul is in a vessel, it's just not the vessel's DNA what matters, it's the soul DNA. So they actually started receiving and using our own DNA as infusions, like as implants, genetic implants for themselves, to kind of like make them more human and kind of like more compatible to those hybrid vessels that they were creating. And not only they were receiving more of this human energy and, you know, embracing and reintegrating back of their human nature to these kind of like genetic alterations of using like hybrid, like human DNA to create the hybrid vessels, but actually their markers will ask to actually get mutated to by the participation of co-creation of such an agenda with us humans, you know, because all counts and all matters when it comes to DNA genetics, not just like actual genetic alteration, but also experience, because experience is a projection of evolution of consciousness. It's a projection of the energy of consciousness. So when we create for ourselves any sort of experience, any sort of like story, any sort of like reality or agenda, that experience that is actually altering our own very genetic markers, you know. So this was really benefiting for them, and as this was really benefiting for us. And I learned a lot from that experience, because I used to think that all grays were totally disconnected from the heart, which actually was not true. It is these are times in which they are becoming more human with us, and we are kind of like converging together in this whole like mission, in this whole agenda of becoming like the 6 hybrid race, which is, you know, the total integration of the negative karmic cycles of energy of the Anunnaki into the new human, what we have been calling in these terms of like human evolution, the new human, the Homo galactus, you know. So it was a pretty emotional experience, and pretty it really teach me a lot. It was really intense, and it was amazing to have learned so much about where we are heading forward, and the true nature of these experiences, because for so many years we have been afraid of them, we have been scared of abductions, and to the point that we thought that they were negative oriented, that it was something dark, that it was something even Luciferian, which is not, you know. It's just really positive and a great opportunity for humanity, for human evolution. But you know, at the same time, at those years of 2018, 2019 is when I will actually start remembering more of the negative dark side of awakening, which will be or my participations in other programs, which is what it's called the Secret Space program. And so for many years I've been hearing that, you know, I will be hearing like, oh, like there is like Nazis, there's like military extraterrestrials and group extraterrestrials in different programs, you know, like different agendas involved with like new world order plans for humanity, and they are part of the elite, and they're like the cabal, and they have bases in the moon, they have bases in Mars. I will hear all these sort of like extraterrestrial, like exopolitical stuff, but I will never be really interested on those things, you know. To be honest, to be personally honest, I never been really interested in exopolitics. At the time I was totally interested in human evolution, in spirit, in soul, in things that were more resonating with my nature, which is just that, you know, the positive aspects of this, you know, whole narrative of human evolution. So I really never cared about those things. It somewhat felt like really not cool, really not interesting. But for some reason, I will always have these military encounters, like these dreams about me being in Germany back in time. I will see like me being in the past in Germany, and I will see the battlefield, and I will see how I was supposedly back in the day on occult societies, and war at Second World War, part of this whole thing, part of this whole, like, you know, part of history. And then I will see myself in that same dream astral regression as dressing in a spacesuit, in a spaceship with other group of recruited humans, being told that because of my genetics and my training, I was needed for a really specific task of using and tinkering extraterrestrial technology, learning how to use it, learning how to manipulate it, and actually use reverse engineering to, again, you know, learn the structure, learn how to use it, learn how to reproduce it even. And so I will say, oh, you know, I will comment like, oh, this has harmful radiation, be careful. You know, I was actually like a scientist there. Like I had knowledge that I do not have here. And so I will see the next event that I will see, which was a big wall saying Maria Orsic. And I have heard about Maria Orsic personally, and I knew that she was part of this whole like secret space program agendas, like somehow like she was like related, but I didn't know exactly what it was really about that kind of like sign of the regression. When I researched about her, I started to see really many things that I have personally in common with her, which is that she was a psychic medium, that she was in Nazi Germany in Second World War, and that she was connected to secret space programs, which I also am here in this century. I'm connected to secret space programs, and she was actually she actually had connections with Aldebaran, and I had connections to Aldebaran. She was part of a society called Real Society, which I learned in this year that I have a connection with in my past life. So I get to be told by synchronicity and by the universe and by my guides that Maria Orsic is part of my oversoul. It's kind of like a soul aspect of my oversoul. So it could be interpreted as a past life aspect, but it is not me. I'm not Maria Orsic reincarnated, but she's like a past life aspect. So that's how I eventually I got karmically connected to the secret space program, because I had this life in Nazi Germany, not as her. I'm not sure if I was her. I'm not sure who I was. I just saw myself there. But what I know for sure is that I was part of Tool Society, a society that started actually the Nazi German party, and Real Society, which is the society that actually channeled extraterrestrial material on anti-gravity technology, which was used by the Nazi Germans for creating what we call the secret space program. So that's how I actually got dragged into this SSP agenda. And what I learned is that they use a form of Nazi-based mind control, Nazi trauma-based mind control against me, called the Honor Project, to use me, to train me as a psychic super soldier, to be on their programs for kind of like an agenda of recreating Atlantis, like the idea of the Atlantean root race, like the Aryan root race, not in terms of like whether if you're Nordic or not. This is not about lineage, like ethnic lineage. They see the Anunnaki lineages, the Aryan energy in all parts around the world. Like many different people around all different countries are part of this program. So when I say Aryan, I don't mean like Nordic. I mean like the Atlantean bloodlines back there in the day, those who were like genetic bloodlines that were in a sense more hybridized with the Anunnaki, the more like the root races that were more genetically related to the Anunnaki. So I actually realized how they had this negative agenda with super soldiers being trained. They will also like enslave us in Mars, in the moon. They will trade us for technology. Genetics will also be sold to different ET species in exchange for more technology. And I will start getting these memories. I will start having regressions. I even got like regressed by extraterrestrial beings who who are part of the agenda of disclosure, because one day when I would go to the bed, I was paralyzed. And at that moment, I started to be regressed as when I was a child, and I will say, oh, these beings, they traumatize me, they sexually traumatize me, they program me with Nazi symbology, and they put me into these programs, and I was here and there, and I will see all these things, all of my experiences on the moon, of the Mars. I don't remember much about them, but I saw some of them, of how I've been used as a scientist and a psychic super soldier. And so that's when I started to become aware of the other side of the agenda, as I was saying. So it was a battle for me, and it's still a battle to the day of today. Because of course the Nazi trauma-based torture, trauma-based control, mind control agendas are so negative, are so dark to me, and to all victims, are targets, that there's just so much that I needed to integrate and to heal within myself, to be able to put my word forward, to put myself out and to continue with my mission. But again, of course, as in divine timing, I started getting downloads about, the structure of the universe, the structure of consciousness, and how is that being a victim at first works, because we have to release that idea of being a victim, which is through emotions. Because when we identify ourselves with victims, we always have emotional reaction to that. We have feelings of disempowerment, we have fear, we have trauma. And so I understood how it was okay to be a victim at first, to victimize myself a little bit and become a little bit dramatic about it and cry a little bit, or, vent a little bit. It was all fine, and it was all part of the process. So at first it was fine, but thanks to the downloads that I was receiving, and thanks to the channelings that I was getting from my higher mind as a conscious channeler, is when I started to get, and also many other teachers, such as Bashar, that helped me really much in my journey. It's how I eventually got that there is a structure to all of this, like projects, agendas, iterations, all of these narratives are just expressions and projections of our own energy, the own energy of our own consciousness. So it's not that we are in projects, we're not in agendas, we're not here in there in narratives. Narratives are just stories created around belief systems. But belief systems are the basic structure, the base, the root of all of those things, all of those experiences, all of those stories, narratives. So that moment is when I had the potential to start my process of integration again, to become part of this human evolution, the becoming of like the Homo galactus, like be part of ascension process, and I'm really grateful of no longer living so much in the old paradigm, because it was okay to feel like I was a victim of these people. But what I actually came to understand is that those souls are actually also source energy. They are actually projections of our own consciousness, and they are put there to trigger us, our negative systems, so they were part of the other side of the equation. They were put there in order to us get triggered and get aware and kind of like conscious of those aspects of ourselves that were not vibrating in alignment, that were not in integration, and that needed to be put back into consciousness, into balance, into integration. So by becoming aware of everything as part of like your own energy being your responsibility is when you make the leap forward to the 4 density. Is when you start to become more of a integrated being and person, like four-dimensional consciousness, which are no longer so much oscillating in the play of duality and polarity, playing like you're either the victim or you're the abuser, or like you're in a drama, or there's a whole terrifying narrative, and the lead is going to, because those narratives are fine, those narratives are like, they're real, they are true, and so we need to understand that just because we are no victims of this, as I said, we have to accept everything like this and that. Like, we have to understand how it's part of the play, to have been in the story, to have been in the narrative, and to have experienced like duality. We have to still play, we have to still place boundaries, we have to say no, like, I'm aware of your agenda, I'm aware of what you want to create for us, but not fall into the rabbit hole of victimhood again. We have to become stronger than that. We have to become integrated in those aspects and become aware that it is our own energy all the time, and that there is some structure behind it, and that there's just no need, just because there's a narrative, there's no need to become extremely terrified about it, And so we need to understand what's going on in terms of the story of mankind, in terms of the story of like human evolution, because that, again, that's part of the play, that's part of the game in a sense, but not play the game in terms of a game, polarity and unconsciousness. So maintaining a balance between the two, becoming aware of the narratives that they are trying to pull forward for us, and that they're creating, co-creating with us, but becoming at the same time aware of the structure, so that we can integrate the belief systems behind them and become empowered, so that we can create our own reality. That's the key, that we have to attain, that we have to embrace in this process of awakening and process of ascension, in a sense. So these are the things that I have been tuning in, that I have been becoming and embracing and understanding and fully like surrounding to in my journey. And I think that everything is a perfect puzzle, that we are all pieces of puzzle, that we all have a perfect shape for a perfect creation of the bigger picture of what's going on Earth. And that the more that we understand the more that we understand about ourselves, our own experiences, and our own projections on the outside, like our own narratives and stories and experiences and belief systems and ideas, and the more that we understand our own story, our own shape, in a sense, the more that we fit all in the big puzzle that we are, in terms of, as a collective. So it has been really tough years. Like, it was, it has been 5 years of intense awakening. I have come forward with a lot of knowledge, with a lot of awareness of what's going on, with a lot of metaphysical knowledge that I will eventually put in a book, because it's just too much to say all of like of a sudden, all in one same place in space and time. So I'm working now on many projects, many in which I'm sharing, I'm writing my information, I'm organizing it, in books. I am putting it all together so that everybody sees more the piece of the puzzle that I am, so that they can reflect back to them more about their own shape as the other piece of the puzzle that they are. So this is actually what we're doing right now. We're reflecting that which we are experiencing and agreeing to co-create on a higher level. So it's really important for any of us to be sharing our stories, to be sharing more of who we are, the ideas that we are, so that we, in this, total orchestration of, drama and revolution of different energies, different, beliefs, different energies, we get to collectively come to a point of, convergence and kind of awareness and consciousness, like a point in which we all understand where we are at and what we have been collectively agreeing to in many layers, in really in many higher levels that we are not aware of in this dimension, so that we have, more of that sense of, knowledge, more of that sense of empowerment, so that we finally can create the better and most preferred reality for ourselves, not just individually, but collectively, And so, yeah, that has been my story and so far, and there's much more to it that I will, be sharing. But of course, it is, again, it is too much to share all in one event, but, luckily, unfortunately, I will be putting much more of my work out there in timing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I know we're going to have lots and lots of questions for you, but before we go to all of our participants' questions, I wanted to ask, I know that you are considered a psychic medium and a channeler, and that you connect with your higher self and bring through information. So I'm wondering if you would be able to do that for us now. Would that be something that you could do, is kind of connect in and just sort of bring a message for all of us that are here?
Yeah, eventually I am able to do that. But for me, the dynamic that I usually take, it's that I am asked a question, or I am asked any specific idea or topic behind it, because that way, as I said before with the downloads, when you get an answer, that's the download, because the information is behind it. Like the question and the answer are part of the same structure. They're not separated in a sense. So whenever, if I am given any specific questions, of course that the information comes forward pretty easily.
Okay. Well, I know that initially you said that your interest was in spiritual topics and those kinds of things. And I'm wondering, maybe you could bring forward some information about maybe the soul itself, and maybe the dynamics of the soul.
Surely. Well, how my higher mind understands the soul, and she communicates to me about how is the structure. It's a geometrical fractal structure of many different vibrational layers of consciousness, facets of consciousness. So the all that is, this is a pattern, this is a kind of like a structural pattern that mimics the whole geometrical structure of the all that is, but in an individual fashion. And that actually is what we see in the flow of life. When we see a spherical center, of like a sphere in the middle that fractalizes itself and expands itself into a what we call the flower of life, we see that potential is held within all spheres of the whole structure, because we have one sphere there as the center point, but just because we have defined it as that, but as the sphere in the center, the sphere that it is like the kind of like base of all of the rest of the spheres. But actually, any sphere of the structure has the same structure that one has. It's an illusion that only one has that. So this same structure is this same structure. It's the same one that the all that is shares with the individual consciousness and with the oversoul. The all that is, it's one same energy, one same consciousness, but expressed in a fractalized, intersected fashion. in which it will be one being all that is, but at the same time, everything and nothing at the same time. So when it expresses itself in this fractal nature, it has the potential by the disintegration, its perception into a lower fractal aspect of itself. It now has a kind of like different dimensional perspective, like not fully integrated perspective about itself in terms of perception. The heart chakra will always hold, the essence will always hold that totally integrated connection with all that is, but the perception in terms of like the mind will actually disintegrate it so that it will have a perspective of something that is different as an illusion. Through the dynamics, through the idea of illusion, of separation, it will have a perception that there is something different, there is something outside, so that that outside, that dynamic of inside and outside has a dynamic, dual dynamic in which it reflects and projects, you know. Mm-hmm. So it will act like a mirror, you know, it will make you seem as that you are separated. Only through that illusion of separation and disintegration, you will have the idea that you're something different. You're something separated, and you're like an individual consciousness. But that's just for you to get to express beingness, for the all that is to express beingness. Because when the all that is everything, it's nothing at the same time. Because if you're everything, you're nothing at the same time, because you hold everything. So the only way of experiencing being something, a someone, it's by disintegrating, making this movement through the fractal nature of all that is, making this movement of like experiencing being one that is disintegrated in perception to the other ones, the other infinite ones who are also part of that same collective. And so that way you will, the all that is will experience the kind of like possibility of learning to be a who, an idea, like have a personality, have like beingness, you know, being someone, being something. And that same structure repeat itself with the structure of the soul of one consciousness. It expresses itself in different fractals, in different layers that make it have the potential to reflect back to itself who it really is, what is the principal harmonic of the being, you know. So that's why the soul has, the consciousness has many different densities and layers, because by the reflection and the information, the constant information of all of these layers of consciousness, there is a reflection process in which we get to a point of like getting a sense, an idea of who we are as source energy. And so the soul, it's just that fractal, is a really specific geometrical fractal structure that organizes, you know, all of these multidimensional facets of consciousness and attain experience in an intelligent, interconnected quantum nature in which, you know, we're all the time receiving information from back and there, here and there, forward, you know, from different aspects of our holistic essence as soul, as consciousness, as individual consciousness, so that we, by reflection, duality, dynamics, we can get a sense, we can reflect who is that we truly are and get back to the principle harmonic. The principle is spherical, part of the structure of that floor of life.
Great, thank you. And let's see, I have another question. Could you talk a little bit more about the Anunnaki? And what is your knowing of the Anunnaki?
Sure. Well, the Anunnaki are a group of extraterrestrial beings composed of many different races, just like humans. And they actually come from the constellation of Orion. But they did not originate in Orion, but in terms of like in terms of like the story of the Anunnaki, to our perspective, they come from that star system, because they have been deteriorating their own ecosystem back and then, because they didn't hold like decreased consciousness within themselves. There were beings that were still in polarity consciousness, and so they were not connected to their nature, and they made a misuse of like their own potential as source energy, which is the development of intellect and technology. And so by disconnecting from the heart space and projecting more of their potential as intellectual and beings and holders of great information about technology, they eventually disconnected from nature and destroyed their own very nature, which is their ecosystems. So they went into a search of gold material, which was like the element that they understood that will heal and repair their ozone layer of their own atmosphere. And so by doing that, they actually should have like arrived into many different planets or stations for them, in which they will leave these this kind of like karmic intertwine of energies. Because when you take something like resources from a planetary consciousness, you are actually creating a karmic system, like a karmic connection with that ecosystem. So they have been habitating many different star systems, and when they eventually get to Earth, that's what they did. They found that we have a lot of gold and a lot of like resources and a lot of potential, as in terms of like resources and actually like genetics, because they observed that the hominids were they have like native DNA that they could mix with, so that they will create a slave race that will make that for them to extract the material, so that they will not be karmically attached to our planetary consciousness. So that's why they choose eventually Earth. It had a lot of potential for their agenda. And so they created what we are to the day of today, the human race, as a slave species. And they put those people to work in the mines, extract the energy, extract the material resources for them, so that the energetical, like karmic energies in exchange there will not be held by them, but rather us, in a sense. It will not be like a direct karmic connection. So eventually, as we are their children, not only the positive potential is what we inherit, like the knowledge, the intellect, the all of like the ancient wisdom, of like ancient civilization like Sumeria, but also like the negative karmic cycles of energy that they were repeating in different star systems, such as Orion. So when they created the human race, they disconnected many of the codons of the DNA, so that these aspects of like the negative karmic aspects of their consciousness will be enhanced, so that they will have more control over us, because by deactivating human DNA, they will disconnect us from Christ consciousness and from creator mentality, which is the ability to be empowered enough to create our own reality, we as conscious creators. So by enhancing this reptilian mentality, this mentality of survivor, those dynamics of victim and abuser, we will be placing third dimensional consciousness in polarity consciousness. And we will be in a mechanic or in a dynamic of like surviving a reality, not creating a reality, so that we will be kin to be slaved, to be mind controlled by them, and to be influenced, to have them as our source of influence so that they could handle us and the course of our evolution. So eventually, as I said, the Anunnaki are a species, a group of many different races. They have more than just one subtype, and not all of them have the same agenda, of course, because there's a lot of misconception. Many people think that the Anunnaki are all native. Many people think that they're all positive, and that's not true, as it happens to any species. There are some who are positive and are helping humanity awake more of their increased consciousness, more of their like potential as, you know, source energy. And there are some who are like the dark agendas that we see to the day of today, who are the elite, the cabal, you know, all the deep state personnel, who are kind of like trying to enhance and highlight more of the Nephilim fallen angel DNA that they left to us. That is the karmic cycles that contain this karmic cycles of energy that they repeated, you know, that they from time to time, you know, in different, you know, planetary consciousness and star systems, so that we will make the same steps, and that making the same step, they will have control over us as a species, and we will not attain freedom. So yeah, there are many kinds of Anunnaki, so we cannot just refer to one, but eventually, as a, you know, as a holistic idea, that's who the Anunnaki really are.
Thanks. I've got two questions. One is about twin flames, and Sophia would like to know more about their purpose and any guidance or ideas about how to connect with them.
Well, my understanding of twin flames is that, again, as consciousness, a soul is structured in a fractal nature. What a twin flame is, it will be kind of like the opposite dual expression of your very own energy, which doesn't mean that it has to be like defined, like you are the masculine or they are the feminine, you know. Usually we are always exchanging roles. We are always exchanging, you know, like the polarities, you know, like the dual energies of masculine and feminine. So to my understanding, the twin flame will be that reflection of that opposite complementary energy of who you are. So, you know, you, both of them, both of us, both of the, you know, both the masculine and the feminine contains also within themselves masculine and feminine energies, but there is a dual play of masculine and feminine within those dynamics of the twin flame, you know. So the twin flame will be in many cases those consciousness that you will synchronistically encounter in your journey, in your most of the time your Kundalini awakening, that it is the time that you're starting to, you know, express and release more of that sort of like energetic resistance, and, you know, become more aware of the unconscious to be put back into consciousness, because you need a really strong mirror for that to be understood, for that process to be met. You need a really strong mirror to understand which are your negative belief systems that you're holding on to make that process of integration. So usually that is the role of the twin flame, because it's complementary to you in terms of consciousness, in terms of soul. So many times when you are in your Kundalini awakening, it will just come to you naturally. It will just come to you by law of attraction, by just vibrational harmonic nature, because it is complementary of your energy. And so the more that you activate, my advice is that you just surrender to your own awakening, because the more that you make that movement and that statement of wanting, desiring to become more of who you are, the more that you make that spiritual movement, the more that you will attract by vibration that opposite or complementary energy that makes the holistic integrated version of your oversoul. So the mirror will come to you, the strongest mirror will come to you, so that you become the strongest version of who you truly are.
Awesome. Thanks. And then see, Jen has a question.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you, Marina.
Hi, Jen.
Nice to
And hi,
meet you.
everyone. I'm sorry I'm late and I missed like a big part of your what you were sharing. I was wondering in all this that you're sharing, if there is or what is the connection of the wisdom of the ancient Maya, because well, they had like all this calendaric system, and there are even calendars that are so sacred that we don't even know what they talked about. And there's one calendar that we work with. I'm from Guatemala, and that I understand that we have just a little percentage of understanding of all that I talk about. And the ones, once you go deeper and deeper, like through that, I got to understand what you just share about the structure of the soul and all of that. And I've always wondered, because I can feel there are so many levels, and I can feel that in this calendar, there are the keys for us to understand how this illusion of time and space is woven. And I understand, no, I mean, that's what I feel, that the Maya understood that, and we can find the keys to actually understand what we call matrix, or this structure, and how we, I don't know, get past this illusion. But I don't know exactly what to ask, but do you feel, or can you channel if there is like a way or a possibility to access that lost or hidden or guarded, I don't want to say like lost knowledge, maybe not just for the Maya, maybe from all other ancient cultures, but do you think it's possible for us, or if if it will help us to remember all that lost knowledge? I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure, that's a really interesting question. And actually, when you ask yourself if it's possible for us to attain the knowledge, that ancient knowledge that we had, well, I'll tell you that knowledge is not something that we have or that we had. That knowledge is something that we are. You know, because again, we're consciousness. So all of that information is nothing but a projection of our own beingness. All of the codes, all of the structure of the universe, of how soul works, of how spirit operates, of how numerology, space, time, all of that, it's source energy, and we are source energy. So that's the point about consciousness. Consciousness, it's not just the living of that structure. Consciousness, it's actually also that structure, because a structure couldn't exist without the meaning, and meaning couldn't exist without the structure. Because for an structure to make sense, you need a meaning, you know, behind it. And for a meaning to make sense, you need a structure again. So those very dual aspects of consciousness are but one seed of source, you know. So when you say that, like whether we can attach it or, you know, attain this knowledge or not, like attract to ourselves or not, it's something that I'm telling you that you hold 100% the potential to unlock within yourself as an individual, even because you are that knowledge. And it's a really important thing to understand that if you feel yourself excited about it, it's because you are pulling from your own very own essence, that from yourself. That's an extension of your soul. And you feel attracted, if you feel excited about it, to learn more about it, it's because you are receiving a download. You are receiving a download for your own very higher mind, your own very higher self. So eventually, yes, all of this information will trigger more and more kind of like curiosity within us, as you know, it's happening to you. And when that happens, it's a key that something within you, it's activating, because it's meant to inform you of something about yourself. Because when we inform ourselves of knowledge, it's just not about knowledge for the sake of knowing, you know. There is actually an idea about who we are in reflection to that knowledge about ourselves that comes, you know, in hand with it. So my advice is that you go and follow your passion,
Mm.
and that you become, you know, like a specialist, if you wish, about it, and that you go and read about it. Because if the Mayan civilization only calls you, it's because you do have a connection to it, because you certainly you have had lives there, and you're trying to kind of like remember that knowledge that your soul once understood and had already integrated in its perception. So right now, that's an energy, that's an idea from you, from your soul, that you want to put out forward and start remembering.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's exactly what you say. Like, I can feel it. I can understand that. What I meant was mainly like with the language that they use, and how the numbers and the glyphs and all of that, like how being able to decipher that language. Like, I can feel it and I can understand that. But how can I, how to use all of that? Like, if we're going to recover how, what all these things meant, or understanding the language that he used.
Well, the language might be different because we all speak our own, we all write our own very same tongue, our own codes, our own symbols. But the structure behind those symbols are actually the language of the universe, is a universal language. So one of the most important things to understand is that all of these ancient civilizations, such as the Mayans, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Atlanteans, the Lemurians, they're all like speaking really similar information, really similar languages in terms of like the structure of their knowledge, their consciousness, and their awareness, but in different tongues. But just because they use different symbols and different tongues doesn't mean that they're talking really different things, because we're all humans, and we were all like the sons of like the Anunnaki, and they gave us and they handed us their knowledge. Not only, of course, like Anunnaki, also many other different civilizations such as Pleiadians, Arcturians, and Syrians, you know, back in the day of like the hybridization of humanity. But you know, they are actually speaking really same codes. And to the Mayans were really aware of how the universe works in terms of synchronicity. And I think that's one of the most important keys of, you know, their knowledge of the Mayan calendar. For example, one of the strongest negative manipulations that the Anunnaki did back in time, it was that they created a linear time system to disconnect us from the natural structure, geometrical, sacred structure of time and space in relation to consciousness, in relation to Christ consciousness. So the numbers that were part of like sacred geometry were actually observed in how, in all of the movement of like the solar system, planetary consciousness, in all of the cycles of energy of all the planetary consciousness of the solar system, and, you know, the galaxies, like all of the movements of all of the expression of time and space are encoded in the numbers and in the geometrical structures of sacred geometry. So the Mayans understood pretty well those geometrical relations, those and kind of like numerological relations to that structure and to those cycles of energy. So it was the Anunnaki back in the times of Rome that decided to use, for example, 12 months instead of 13, which is the number found in Fibonacci sequence, you know, and who created this calendar for us that will get us out of touch with sacred geometry and sacred numbers, you know. So the Mayan really understood that sacred structure. So if you're being pulled to it, if you're being called to recover more of the information that I will give you, like I recommend you to go forward with it, because that might be really kind of like important for you to uncover within yourself.
Thank you very much. Blessings.
You're really welcome.
Thank you, Janet. Mariana sent a copy of the interview that she did with you. So I got to listen to some of that this afternoon, Jen. It was really awesome.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much. I'm glad you
Sure.
were able to see it.
Yeah, let's see. Now we have Lynn. And Lynn would like for you to say more about the mantis beings. I don't have any particular context, but can you share your knowledge about the mantis beings?
Oh, sure. What I understand of the mantids, it's that they are being called right now for the hybridization programs because they are master geneticists. They have an intense knowledge on genetics. So, it's really interesting because many times humans, we have many people have come to me to say that I prove how is that we are a hybrid species. Now, and they ask me, will the scientific people of our planet ever get to a point to prove that we are indeed like hybrid beings, And I tell them most of the times that we are really limited still in terms of the understanding of consciousness and genetics to be able to prove that in a physical way, like objective way, because genetics goes much more farther than just like the physical expressing on like the proteins, and the biological structure, it's just not a molecular structure and not just the physical heritage that we gain, it goes far beyond that to metaphysical DNA. It connects with all of the layers of consciousness that we are as source energy, that we are as individuals. And so we are not the only ones that find a lot of struggle yet with genetics. Also beings like the Greys, even though they seem to be really like aware of DNA and hybridization because they have been part of this agenda, they are also not so kind of like masters of this knowledge, so they call the mantis beings who are like really good with this understanding of the physical aspects of DNA and the metaphysical aspects, like both the physical and metaphysical aspects of DNA and how it relates to how it connects with aspects, vibrational codes within consciousness. Because again, the structure, it just goes beyond, the molecular physical fashion. So, that's what I know about the mantids. That's at least my specific particular experiences with them. I've seen them in hybrid programs, and they were assisting the Pleiadians, they were assisting the Greys, and they were actually also given part of their DNA, not just, being geneticists, but actually given DNA to these hybrid races that they are creating in these programs.
Lynn, do you have anything else that you want to ask?
Yes. Can you hear me, Sheila?
Yeah.
Oh, Marina, I have to just acknowledge your beingness, your vastness. You are universal in all your understandings and sharings. So when the pandemic started, I began to have disappearances, missing time, but not what we understand as missing time with abductions and with grays. It happens only between 10 at night and 2 in the morning, only in the kitchen, only when I eat. And why I call these disappearances is I leave in consciousness. I have no idea where I go. I have no idea what I'm doing. I know nothing about it. And when I return with my kitchen in complete disarray. And these disappearances are increasing in, I'll put this in parentheses, in danger. The other night, I found myself actually biting on the end of a plastic knife. I looked all over the kitchen for where the end of the plastic knife would be, and I could not find it. And this is the kind of thing that is happening. I will find myself chewing on an orange peel from a very long time ago. I don't know where it's come from. It will be wrapped in paper towel that our store does not sell. And I just, if you could, if you have heard of this, again, it's not with the grays. I see no beings at all, and I receive no information when I'm gone. I know nothing about this. And this is brand new in my life. So thank you for whatever might come through for you.
Well, for getting more of the awareness on what it is exactly your background and what is exactly going on with your experiences. First of all, the first step is to ask yourself how you're feeling about that experience. What do you think, what is that you believe that it's going on with you in terms of your state of being? Because most of the times when we have experiences and our mind is experiencing like a limitation and doubts, and it feels like a little bit like having like a trouble with discernment, with extracting the actual like objective information behind an experience. We are often really clueless because it's a really hard process, for just the mind to do the task, because the mind is not just as intelligent as we think, obviously, that it is. The mind, it's just the aspect of our consciousness that reproduces all these programs, or of like the mental expression of our beingness, like a computer programming, with all these different, like thought processes and belief systems. But I mean, the mind itself alone without the heart space does not work, So the body and the heart space and the mind has to be put like in synchronicity, so that in that sacred trinity, we can get a bigger picture of the whole experience, because 10% is what your mind approximately will perceive that it is going on with all of this, like intellectual information, like, intuition and everything. But the whole rest, the big rest of the experience, it's the heart, it's held in the heart space, because it's divine intelligence. The heart space is the key for most of our experiences, because again, everything is a projection of our own consciousness, and we are a trinity. We are not just one thing. We're not the mind. We're not what we think. So one of my questions to you will be to ask yourself, how do you feel in your state of being? How does your body feels? Because your body is really intelligent, because we are taught that the third eye is the one who sees all. But there's just much more than that. For example, our body, when we talk about the solar plexus, it's the chakra of empathy. We get to feel, that's why we often like get told, trust your guts, when we feel like we need to become intuitive or have a little sense of like instinct, having an experiences, like when we feel dubious, that's why we say, and we are told, trust your guts, because the solar plexus actually, it's the chakra of sensing. It's the chakra of having more of like the idea of like an empathic perspective on what is going on around us in an energetical and vibrational way. So the heart space, which is the heart chakra, will be like that cosmic divine intelligence that I was talking about. And then of course the mind will have the third eye, which is the psychic sight, the eye that sees it all, but to just use one of them will be really troubling, as you're finding yourself, like in a challenge, not really being able to discern what's going on. So that's what I'm asking, that you, while synchronizing the three of those aspects of yourself, mind, body, soul, heart, mind, heart, and body, you ask yourself, what is your state of being when you're having those experiences? How is that you're feeling? Because that's almost up to 90% of the information behind your actual experience, and will tell you much more than your mind will do.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you very much.
You're really welcome.
Okay, let's see. Michael has a question. Michael, you want to ask your question?
Sure. Well, it's sort of a discussion. Thanks for sharing so openly, Marina. And I noticed Jacqueline Smith's in the room. She's still here?
Let's see. Yep, I think she is.
Okay.
She's listening. Mhm.
And are there any other hybrids that might be with us who wish to participate?
I don't see anything from Jacqueline. I think she's just listening in tonight.
Okay, cool. Well, what I was
Hi, Michael. I could say something on that topic if you wish.
Sure. So what my question or what I'm very, very interested in is being a hybrid. How is that different to being human? As you know, I'm doing this project called Beyond Being Human, and that's very much part of it. And do you actually do any kind of research on, like, okay, how is it different from being human? And yeah, however you want to shape that, I guess.
Sure. Thank you, Michael, for that question. Well, actually, it's a really interesting question because it is asked many times in this community. And actually, the answer is really surprising to many because, in fact, the idea of being a hybrid, it's being more of being human. You know, that's the thing behind this hybridization program, that the whole concept of becoming the sixth hybrid race, becoming hybridized individual, is just becoming more of who we are as humans. Because again, the grays, as we know them, they are the future version of us who made an exploration, who went through a path of exploration of consciousness, of the repetition of cycles of humanity, I mean, of the Anunnaki, you know, with all these, you know, like karmic dense energies, you know, like, polarity, consciousness, Trinity, and you know, this empowerment, this connection from heart, nature, and emotions. And we humans, and so as sons of the Anunnaki, we repeated those same steps, and the Greys repeated those same steps again. So, you know, both the Anunnaki sons, which is us humans, and the Greys, we're all humans, you know, even the Anunnaki are humans themselves. So we are all part of like a same sort of like group of like a family, like a soul family in terms of genetics. We have a really specific lineage that is really similar. It's very human in a sense. So just the idea behind being hybridized, there is just no more of the ET alienation as we have thought that it was all about. It is in fact becoming more of who we are as humans. But becoming more of who we are as humans is also becoming more of that extraterrestrial aspect of ourselves. Because we as humans, we're hybridized. We were created with the star DNA, not only from the Anunnaki, but also the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, the Sirians, the Andromedans, all of these different ET races. So that's why when you are hybridized with gray DNA, it seems that you're more alien or more extraterrestrial, because of course those aspects of our consciousness are vibrating in higher levels. It's the hyper sapient energy. It's representing more of that cosmic awareness, more of that star lineage, of that star origin. But it does not mean by any means that the humans doesn't hold it. It just means that we had it a little bit less activated, that not yet, active, not yet integrating that, aspect or genetic background ourselves. So there is difference, of course, in terms of the dynamics, of what it will be to be not activated or to be an activated human. But there is no limitations as to if you can experience that or not, because again, we all are now being part of this hybridization agenda. So whether you have been particularly or individually like genetically altered or not on a physical or metaphysical level, it doesn't just really matter, because those are reintegrations of part of your own very own DNA. It's not that I was one person and then I got genetic implants and I become a different person. My own consciousness projected that narrative that I will get hybrid DNA so that I will be this person that I am today. It kind of like express itself as something outside of me, but actually it's not outside. It was a projection for me forward, for my own essence, like already exists in essence. So going back to what I was saying, whether if you have been particularly or individually altered by these beings, it doesn't really matter, because we are all receiving this information in our genetics, because we are aligning ourselves to this path, to this agenda, by deciding to awake our own DNA and start this process of, becoming hybrids, becoming the Homo galactus, becoming the new human. Is that we are altering and hybridizing our own DNA without really using any specific artificial methods or technology. We are all hybridizing ourselves, and we're all really part of this hybrid agenda. So in a sense, we're all hybrids, and we all have the potential to be hybrids.
Thank you. Cool.
You're welcome.
Anyone else want to add on that?
I just wanted to say, this is Jacqueline.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi, Jacqueline.
I'm not going to come on screen tonight, but I appreciate what Marina is saying, and I think it's also the intention of the hybridization program and all the changes that are going on is about the evolutionary process. Is about helping us to evolve. I mean, we came from the stars. So yes, as we integrate, that DNA, then we are we're helping as bridges to help the rest of humanity to continue to evolve, if that makes sense. Because I think that's really key in terms of what it's about. Yeah. And I appreciate
I would like to say something if we've got time.
Sure, Kevin. And then Barbara, if you want to ask a question also, we'd love to have your input.
Marina, that was a fascinating presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you answered a question that I've been pondering on for many years. And I have a contact with Anunnaki from the age of 14, and I've had contact with him all my life. And on one occasion, he came to me, and I was beckoned out of my bedroom to go and meet him, as it were. And there was a pillar of light on the landing. And I walked into the pillar of light, and he spoke to me. And he said that there was a tremendous energy. And he said, I am your father, you are your father's son. Now, and then it lasted about maybe 10, 15 seconds. And then the energy centered in my heart chakra, shall we say, from the ceiling to the floor. And that's where it finished. And then I had a tremendous amount of energy then. But I often wondered whether it was my deceased father that was speaking to me. I found out later it was rather the Anunnaki. And but my thoughts was, he's obviously not my father. I suspect he's the father of humanity. And you've answered that question for me this evening. So thank you very much for doing that. I do appreciate it. And I think that I used to think I was a starseed. I had contact from, say, at the age of 8. But having listened just recently to Barbara Lamb and Mary Rodwell, I seem to have a lot of the abilities that our star families have. I'm able to use consciousness for travel, communication, for healing, for creation itself, creating our own reality. And I'm able to do that because they've taught me how to do that. So I'm upgrading myself now to a hybrid, although I think they're just labels. And I would agree with what Jacqueline Smith's saying. We are here as the star seeds, as the walk-ins, as the indigos, to help with the evolution of our species, the human species. So I think it's exciting times ahead. And thank you, Marina, for answering that question for me. Thank you.
You're really welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, and thanks, Kevin. And Kevin will be our speaker next Thursday. So mark that down on your calendar. Be sure not to miss that. And let's see, Barbara, do you have a question or comment or statement you'd like to make?
I do. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've been listening to all of this. Marina, thank you so much. This was outstanding. I so much appreciate your sharing. And you're just such a lovely, lovely representative from the cosmos here helping us. And I've been particularly interested for 30 years now in the Mantis beings. I'm interested in all of them, but somehow the Mantis beings really, really keep getting my attention and my heart. And I think that's because some of the people I have worked with in regression, quite a number of the people have experienced the Mantis beings as being especially loving in that unconditional loving way. And I wonder if from your perceptions, you think that the Mantis or maybe some of the other types of beings who interact with humans are especially loving.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you for all those kind words. Thank you really much. That was really sweet, Barbara. And as to your question, I agree. I have to agree 100% with the people that, you assisted, because I also experienced that when I had an encounter with the Mantis for the hybrid programs. I actually had an energetic merging with one of them. And the kind of love that you experience with them, it's so high vibrational that you really kind of like think that it is an angelic frequency, an angelic kind of like vibe, vibration. And I have to admit that what I have observed of Mantis, it's that as they come from Cassiopeia, they are really intelligent individual, but they're also really, really unconditional loving. And they're almost like a really good expression of Chris consciousness. They're really, really, yes.
Oh, that I'm absolutely feeling thrilled, moved to tears, and I don't know why that is, although Jacqueline Smith helped me to realize a few years ago that that is part of my heritage. I was a Mantis being for some lifetimes, quite a while back, but I've been some of those other species too in previous lifetimes. But it is the Mantis beings that just stir my heart and my consciousness more than any. So thank you. When you say that you can feel the Christ consciousness from them, I'm really moved literally to tears. Thank you very much.
You're really welcome, Barbara.
Wow, that's great.
Wow, Barbara, that's a real message. Real message
Yes.
to you, just so you know, and we all know that about you. So I just wanted to, this is Joan.
Hey, Joan.
Wow. I'm just moved to tears by the whole thing, but very much by people's reactions. And then the hybrids among us. So I just appreciate you, Marina. Just I don't have anything to ask at this time, but appreciate it. I wanted to tell Barbara, you know, that's a message to you
Wow.
about
I
the
really
moon.
feel that I can hardly stand up.
Thanks.
And also
This-
Joan of Angels, I heard you give your talk the other day on
Ooh,
total disclosure. And I thank you so much for that. You know, you're just a wonderful spirit, a wonderful combination of human naturalness and human enthusiasm and higher perspective. I just think it's great what you're doing.
wow, well, Barbara, thank you so much. I so appreciate that. And it was an honor to be with you. This whole thing is just an honor to be with so many ETs and hybrid people. It's my
Yes.
first time really sitting in, and it's like, oh my God. I'm just
You're a really special group. Incredibly special. Thanks to Sheila
Yeah.
for pulling it all.
And you and Neil and everybody. So thank you. And Joan will be one of our speakers in September.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, excited
Good.
to hear what you have to bring forward. So just real quickly, does anyone else have a question for Marina or a comment? Okay, Gary?
It was wonderful, Marina. I'm
Thank you
just
so much.
making a comment. Really, I am very grateful that you are here on Earth with us.
Oh,
And
thank you so much. That's so sweet.
really, it's important. It's beyond important that you are here and relating to people. And I definitely hope that more and more people in the world will be experiencing you and learning from you. This is such a fantastic bridge. You are a fantastic bridge in the very best way between us humans and the beings out there. And we really need a very good, positive bridge with the beings. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And thank you also so much for your contributions, because we wouldn't be here in this role if it wasn't because of you, you know, you all of older generations, you know, you opened the path for us.
Yeah, 30 years ago, I started all this. Yeah.
Thank you,
Wonderful,
Barbara.
wonderful
Thank
that you're taking it on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay,
Uh,
Gary?
Yeah, Marina, I had a question. You mentioned your energetic merging with the mantises. And have you had that with other beings before? And could you explain kind of, you know, how the feeling is behind that and what that experience is like? And also, I was wondering where you obtained a lot of your wisdom and knowledge about all these topics. You know, a lot of it I've seemed to have heard here and there over the years from different places. But I was wondering, you know, how most of this information came to you as well.
Well, so the first question, I experienced my energetic merging with the Mantis for the purpose of activating specific aspects of my genetic material so that it will be harmonically blended or connected with them for the purpose of the hybrid agendas. Because when there is such an experience of communion, we are kind of like harmonizing our genetics and our kind of like soul in a way that we create a bridge so that the genetics that they infuse in the hybrid babies have much more of the greater sense and ideas and energy of who we are, both of us, you know. It's the same as when you make love to create a child, and the more love that you put in that communion, in that experience of communion, the more energy, the more love and potential that the baby, that the newborn comes with, you know, because the energies of creativeness are so strong that you can only attain that through connecting much stronger with the energy of the source of who you are. So the really interesting thing about this specific experience is that it was not of a sexual nature. We humans usually use just sexual energy to create babies and to create life, but that is something that in other civilizations goes beyond that only particular sexual energy. Of course, is a basic one for creating hybrids, but higher beings usually also kind of like enhance and highlight this communion in other aspects of themselves, in other chakras, which is, ideas of consciousness. So they actually blend, they take all of the expressions of the chakra system and consciousness and take equal importance in the moment of the merging and the communion of this co-creative experience, But the purpose, it was not like just for the creation of like a hybrid being or a conscious, like a hybrid conscious vessel, but also it was more like a meaningful experience of, communion, of convergence between my consciousness and their consciousness, that I will integrate their energy without, my very own one energy, so that the being that will come out of that genetic extraction or material that will get extracted for the creation of these hybrid beings will hold more of this love bond like connection with them. It will have a more like harmonic a stronger energy of love, of connection, of a connection and in terms of like love, like in all aspects of ourselves. So when I had this experience with other beings, it was my experience with the Palladian, with Michael. But with Michael, it was more centered, it was more focused in sexuality rather than on aspects of my kind of like chakra system, because it was most focused to the helping and the assistance of the awakening of my Kundalini, that at the time was really concentrated in the lower chakras, and actually also, of course, more focused in the sexual part of the creation of hybrid consciousness. And as to the second question, it will happen many times that, my specific information that I share, I specifically got it mostly from my higher mind. But I also heard other galactic guides such as Bashar. I had a lot of connection with Bashar. That's why some of my son a little bit like Bashar. And actually that has really meaningful idea behind it. And it's that one of the hybrid races that I'm mostly connected to, it's the Sasani. So when I will be awakening to my multidimensional nature and to my participation in the hybrid programs, I will be at the same time expressing a lot of excitement towards the idea of channeling the structure of existence, that it is something that the Sasanis often give us to us and handle us through Daryl Anka, his channeler. So it's a really fun experience, because at that time I didn't know much about Bashar or the Sasani. I was just not aware of them at all, but I heard about them, so I will go to my bedroom and I will start channeling. I start kind of like getting downloads, about how consciousness works. I will start to get, information about quantum manifestation, about the dynamics of metaphysics, about the dynamics of consciousness and everything. And so suddenly I will come with like information, often quotes, specific channel ideas or informations that land like much later I will see in a group that I will have joined of Bashar, channeled by Daryl Anka. So at first it was like a little bit shocking to me, because I thought, this can be true, how is that, I channeled just something and then I see it on Facebook. I mean, what's going on? This is like a little bit shocking, it scared me at the beginning, but then I realized that the reason behind that happening, it's that I was aligning myself to the hybrid frequency. So when I will channel my higher mind, I will be channeling really stronger strongly that aspect of consciousness of my higher mind, which is hybrid energy, the Sasani energy, which I'm really connected in terms of frequency, in terms of energy, in terms of genetics, you know. So that's why sometimes my teachings resonate with the Sasanic awareness, because when I channel my higher mind, as I'm a hybridized individual with great DNA, I represent a lot, my higher mind represent a lot of that hybrid consciousness. So there are many things in common with them, with their message, with their information. And of course, it will not be just resonating with the information that they present, you know, as we are hybrids with the Anunnaki, you know, all of this information is something that we all have within ourselves as humans, you know. It's not that we will have a specific information like that is separated from the collective, you know. We all have that holistic, you know, composition of ancient knowledge and ancient wisdom within ourselves, you know. So it's true that as individuals, we might find more excitement towards this specific knowledge or this other, and we will express it in different ways. But at the same, you know, at the end of the day, it will all come back to one same, you know, universal structure, because that ancient knowledge, and that's the basic, like the fundamental basic knowledge that humanity was created from, you know. It's the ancient animal wisdom that we all hold within ourselves, because they are our parents and we are all our children. So the information, all of this information of, you know, the ancient civilizations and the Anunnaki will be awakening within many of us, you know, around all parts of the world. That's why many times it really does sound like resonating, like similar knowledge, because we are coming forward with really really similar knowledge, really like ancient wisdom that we are all like informing ourselves and remembering back from the times of Atlantis and back from the times of Lemuria and Mesopotamia and Sumeria and all these civilizations in which we already knew this knowledge and we were aware of it, but we eventually lost it with time. But yeah, but mostly from a higher mind and from channeling, basically, like intuitively as downloads.
Thank you. And talking about ancient knowledge, the flower of life you were talking about earlier, in that symbol, which has been seen on pyramids and different structures around the world, ancient structures. And is there any way for people to use that to their advantage, that flower of life symbol during, you know, regular ongoing activities day to day that you recommend?
Well, yes, the flower of life is a really interesting sacred geometry structure, because actually all sacred geometries that you can imagine are encrypted within the flower of life. So the flower of life, it's called like that because it is the holistic representation of all of the rest of the geometrical aspects, sacred geometry aspects of nature and the universe. So it has that potential, it's that powerful, that it is the represented, in a sense, the all that is. And how you can use it, well, it has really powerful energies and really powerful potential because of its nature and because all of the sacred numbers and proportions and relations within itself, and all of the symbols and all of the ideas that it holds within itself. So you can use it in many different ways. You can connect to it in many different ways that it will be beneficial or of your advantage in a day-to-day life. Anything will work. Any kind of like way or actual like experience of connection to it or use of it will serve you, because it doesn't just matter. It's not, there's no definitive like way. There's many kind of course practice that tells you like you do this and you can do that, but that's a creative expression of ways to express your connection to it and awake within yourself that structure, that energetical idea of that structure within yourself. you are part of and it is part of you. But usually, if you are drawn to the symbol yourself individually, or to any symbol or to any other sacred geometry structure, it is calling your attention specifically at that time, because it means that you are activating something within yourself. You're putting it down within yourself, an idea, and a specific awareness, and a specific consciousness, and a specific frequency attribute that it is actually desiring to come to the surface of your awareness, so that you become aware of that which you have been connected to and activate within yourself. So any form of use that you feel passionate or excited about using it will work 100% for you.
Thank you. And mentioning that, what about crop circle designs what do you have to say about crop circles? I know Barbara's done a lot of work with crop circles over the years.
Right.
Well, crop circles are messages from our ET visitors, our ET friends. And actually, they have many different meanings from time to time, because, every time there's a new crop cycle, it's because every time they're informing us on a new, different astronomical event on Earth. Like, oftentimes it is telling us that how the astros are moving, and that specific movement of the astros are the reflection of what's going on in terms of the planetary consciousness of Earth. And as we are part of Earth, we are Earth in a sense, how we're moving ourselves forward too. So that those geometrical structures and symbols that we see reflected in the crop cycles, they're often like creating a geometrical representation of these like energetic movements, of these cycles of energy that is part of our collective consciousness evolution that we are putting ourselves for, that we are aligning forward with, that we are connecting to. What's the next step? What's the next thing that we have agreed on a higher level that we will be experiencing and integrating and activating within ourselves? So, the astrological structure of the solar system, it's a map of consciousness within our own vessels, both on an individual level and also on a collective level. It is a map of our consciousness. And that is something that the Kabbalah structure, the Tree of Life, also teaches. It is explaining the whole ideas of all of the consciousness, of the structure of consciousness, how it relates to each other. And depending on the exact relationship of this connecting to this other symbol on this planet in relation to this planet and ours, it means it has a meaning, it has an idea. And depending on the movement of those of those three elements, or four or two or one, depending on the movement of those elements connecting to each other, that geometrical expression, that mathematical relationship, it's telling us how the cycle of energy, it's kind of like oscillating. It's kind of like expressing of our own consciousness evolving, So they're basically just informing ourselves of something, of movements, of spiritual movements that we do within ourselves. But many times people fight around, what is this specific meaning? What is it? Many people often want to become aware of, find the urge to become aware in their mind, in their intellect. What is the specific information of each of the crop cycles? And many times they eventually get to receive it, because many times it's not just about movement. It's just not about, energetical messages, vibrational messages, but also specific information that we need to remember, such as free energy technology, such as it happened many times, with many crop cycles. But actually, we do not need many times to just we don't have to have an urge to intellectually integrate what it means, because just by seeing it, that's the power of the crop cycles. Just by seeing the structure, the symbol, just by seeing it, it does have an activational purpose. It has an activational energy within ourselves that even if our physical mind is yet not ready to integrate and to understand and comprehend, our soul in all of its layers, in its higher levels mostly, it understands and it receives the information 100%, and we get to activate that idea in our consciousness, in the higher aspects of our consciousness, and it eventually in divine right timing will come, to the lower aspects in many different ways, that it doesn't have to be, again, understanding intellectually what it means, what it was about, but either by synchronicity or by symbols or by experiences or by challenges or by things that we will experience and encounter in our day-to-day life. It will all come to the surface of our consciousness in one way or another, but it does activate it.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Marina, for being with us tonight. I know it's 4:30 in the morning your time. So I am very appreciative of you staying up late and just, honor the space that you've helped to create for all of us here tonight. And so I do want to remind everyone, Marina has a website. It's posted behind her. Do you want to talk a little bit about the services that you provide in case people would like to book a session with you?
Sure, thank you. Well, my page is mostly a web page in which I create a space for me to organize all of my material. I have my extraterrestrial artwork gallery and also like an experiential blog. I have channel material. I have also an about page in which I shared like this summary of my story in case, you want to read it a little bit and, learn more about it, because I have more specific details in that page. And also there's a page, there's a website, page that has the service list in which I offer my energetic readings, in which I read your star origins, I read your soul connections, because as we are hybrids, we have many different soul connections and specific, genetic heritage, both metaphysical and physical. So I can actually tune into that, and I can actually read your origins, and I can read your connections, and I can actually see the color of your aura. I can see how I interpret your energy in general, in terms of, what I see that it is a blockage within yourself, maybe a chakra is not really aligned, and I actually also can see sometimes specific, lifetimes that you may have had in civilizations or other star systems, or even roles, or, services that you offer back in time, or other in other aspects of your consciousness, in other incarnations. And then I have another service, which is the extraterrestrial portrait, in which I do a third dimensional depiction of extraterrestrial connections, but I only work with guidance in sense of like a description of the being, because right now I'm not channeling extraterrestrial entities or their looks. So if you have if you know how your extraterrestrial counterpart or friend or guy looks like, and you want to give it light in 3D, in 3D and a 3-dimensional structure, I can do that. And then I have the cosmic portrait, in which I take, I ask you for a portrait, like a picture of yourself, in which is well centered into the camera. And then I use Photoshop and other programs, and I give you cosmic, essence, so that, you have kind of like an idea of many different symbols and many different cosmic energies that you're connected to, because sometimes the colors that I use for them and the symbols that I put in the portraits are actually extracted for your own auric field, are symbols or energies that are vibrating your auric field. And then I have my channel session service, in which I connect with my higher mind, and she comes forward with guidance, specific guidance for your your current challenges, so that it can guide you through them, and it can assist you to become more who you are, to become more integrated. It can guide you to the light, and it can explain you the structure of existence, the structure of consciousness, how it works, how the universe, the mechanisms of the universe and consciousness, so that again, you have a guidance to integrate those lower frequency aspects of yourself, and you become more of yourself.
Great. Thank you so much. And if you've enjoyed listening to Marina, please sign up for our Starseed Summit, which is October the 30th and 31st, where she'll be one of our speakers. So thank you for doing that. And I believe Joan is going to be one of our speakers as well. So thank you, Joan, for that. And if anyone has any comments, do you have an email where people could email you questions?
Sure. My email is Marina Seren with 2 N's at the end, at gmail.com.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much again. I really appreciate it. Thanks to all of our participants and all the amazing comments that came out. Think about this tonight. We all are hybrids in one form or another. We just all may not display the particular attributes at this time. But a lot of times people will email me after we have these meetings, and it's like, oh my gosh, I just realized that. And so if you have had those kind of experiences, please let us know. If you are not part of our mailing list, please join that on wishalliance.org. And we also have a Facebook page, and that also is Wish Alliance, or you can type in walk-ins, indigos, starseeds, and hybrids. And this site is just a little over a month old. We have about 370 people, so we are just growing by leaps and bounds, and we'd love to have you join us. So again, thank everyone. Thank you, Marina, for your time, for staying up so late for us. We're very, very grateful, and I'll be forwarding this to Neil, and thanks to Neil Gar, he so graciously allows us to play our meetings on Portal to Ascension, and we also have all of our meetings that are housed on Portal to Ascension archives, so you can check those out. And then I will be adding June, July, and this month's presentations onto the Wish Alliance site. So thank you all very much. Kevin will be our speaker next week. And until then, have a beautiful and blessed week. Namaste. Good night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end, everyone. So thank you so much for being here.